What's up, everybody? This is Big Flippin' Bass, and today I got a special video for you. This is the one I left a link at the end of the last video for the talk, and that's what this is basically. This is going over the last trip we took out to Sheldon Reservoir. Me and my dad on the 1v1 tournament, which I bowed down to him. He whacked me, which I had to start off by apologizing. Had some technical difficulties with my GoPro. It started taking pictures. It wouldn't record the video, and so the first couple of fish I actually missed, and then it died not even halfway through, like probably a quarter of the way through. Like it died, and that's when I had my phone out. So I need to get in a better habit of having both of them going. So if one of them was not working properly, I at least have something to show y'all. But he did. He wound up waxing me on that trip. It was a very slow trip. I don't know. Weather conditions played a huge difference in it. I think the last time we went, it was super hot, super clear. Sheldon Reservoir, for people who's not around the Houston area, it's probably what, 4 feet deep at the deepest point.
Yeah, about, I think the deepest I have measured on the depth finder is about 7 foot.
7 foot?
Just in points where the old river channel runs through the reservoir.
And it's like it's a man-made lake, right?
It is a man-made lake.
And it's basically just to preserve natural wildlife, and they have it stocked full of bass and everything. And it's a catch and release. You have to catch and release. So there are some decent fish in there, but like you said, it's just a shallow lake, and even in the deepest part, 7 foot deep, you know, the grass line is literally just a couple inches underneath the water. So you can't run nothing too much like a crankbait or anything like that. You really pick up the grass. So you can almost count any crankbaits out. Lipless crankbaits may work if you could find an area you can rip it through the grass, but there's not really a empty place to rip it through and allow it to pause. You know, you're just ripping from grass to grass pretty much. And I think that's where a lot of our key bites come in early morning, was the top water running over those grass lines straight up. We'd hit the pads. The pads are really thick up against the bank. They come off probably, what, 15 yards, something like that?
Probably, yeah.
10 to 15 yards off the bank, and so you cast right at the edge of those pads and just run your top waters across the edge of this grass underneath the water, and they were blowing up early in the morning, several hits, but it seemed like we were getting a lot of little things. They couldn't even take the treble hooks. I mean, even on the top waters, they're not hitting the treble hooks very well. The soft plastics, I went through 1,000 crawls and stuff like that. They would just eat the legs off of them. So we're just going to briefly go over what our success came from. Like I said, I didn't catch any of his. I do have a picture of his. He caught a 4-pounder as well. It was a little smaller than the one I caught, but you know, he still wound up eating. But anyway, I have a picture. I'll put that at the end of the video so y'all can see that. I'm going to let him start. So see, he got on the board first, and he really ran the show for most of the day. Mine was just a couple little ones, which you saw 2 of them on video. But I'm going to let him start on what his key baits were and why he chose those, and compared to other lakes. Because this lake is actually super clear water, so you can see all the way to the bottom for the most part. But I'm going to let him go over what he started with first.
The first thing I started with was this H2O Express double propeller with a kind of a, would you call that a shad? Not a shad, but a bluegill, or...
Yeah, that's a female bluegill pattern to it, prop bait.
It's a prop bait, got a prop on both ends of it. It does have a white feather tail that mimics the tail of a fish. And I started with this one because of the water being so clear at Sheldon Lake. It's amazing how it's a dark lake because of all the grass and hydrilla that's in the lake, but the water is just amazingly clear even after all the storms we've had coming through. So I started with the bluegill pattern because of it being so clear, and with it being the early morning, it was fairly calm when we first got out there. Wind picked up a little bit later, but when we got out there, the water was dead calm. So I started throwing this topwater prop bait, and one of the things I like about this bait is it doesn't just swim belly down. It will wobble from side to side and give the fish a good view of that side bluegill pattern, so they get to see the color in it. And it does look like a fish that's coming up on top of the water, a small bait fish trying to get away from a larger predator. So if you ever notice shad or any other fish, when they come up on top of the water to get away from a predator fish, they're not going to swim directly straight. They come up and lay on their sides and flip over, and this fish will mimic that. And we started down the first bank that we started down, I probably got in maybe 20 casts and immediately got a hit on this top water.
I don't even think it was that. I mean, it was you got a couple of them, the buzz little pops on it, and then probably the first 10 casts, like you said, you got one that's actually suck it now.
Yeah, and he hit it, and he got off right before I got him on the boat. And then about 10 casts after that, I got my first fish, which was, just under a pound.
Yeah,
it was 0.8 pounds.
Yeah, I think so.
0.8 something pounds. So busted out the top water real quick that morning, and you actually got a couple of hits on a frog. They just weren't.
Yeah, I kind of done the same thing. You know, I was counting on that early morning topwater bite. So before we went out, like I tied on several buzz style baits, like the River to Sea Whopper Plopper, a buzz bait itself, which I shot. It was white and chartreuse. So I wish I would have tied the black one on. I think I should have went with that one instead. But I was thinking, you know, the clear colors, the white one might, or clear water, the white one might do better. And I tried several different frogs out there. Was walking them and popping them there across the lily pads, across the grass pads, and I had several of them to pop it, and just it seemed like none of them was really big enough to suck it down. They couldn't swallow it. I never had one to really hit it and take it under for even giving me a chance to set the hook. The buzz bait, I've never had much luck with buzz baits. They are successful baits. I do know that they're very good baits, but I've never had much luck with it, and I just still didn't get a hit on there. But like I said, I think I should have went with a black one on that one.
Well, I think too the being post spawn, and I think they were post spawn in that lake.
Yeah.
It's a shallow lake, so the sun warms the water up quicker, which means they've probably spawned earlier because they, being in warmer water and the water warming faster than the deeper lakes. But even like today, I went out to the local lake and not many hits, and all the guys that were out there fishing, there weren't that many hits, and the ones that were hitting were extremely small.
Yeah.
A lot of little tiny hits, a lot of which I think was panfish, crappie and bluegill, and even caught a small rock bass. I think they were smaller fish. The bass were, today that we were catching, were very small, and that tends to go right along with what we saw Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, it was a lot of small fish hitting, and they wouldn't take it. I think the bigger fish who have spawned are now moving out to the deeper water, and they're very lethargic, and you know they're recuperating from the spawn, and that leaves all the smaller fish that weren't spawning this season, or small males that weren't building beds for the spawn. That leaves them.
The yearlings that ain't going enough to spawn, they're still up around the shore feeding up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're too small to do anything.
Now, just because it's the majority of them's probably spawned, I don't mean there wouldn't be one or two of them. You know, still a couple of them's lingering behind the spawn season. I think a lot of people think that it just comes and happens in a couple of weeks, and they all come up, lay spawn, and go back out. That's not the case. It actually happens around the new moon cycle.
Right.
So the first new moon, when the water hits, I think it's like, what, 65 degrees?
So
something
about
like that?
67, I think.
Yeah.
Is usually 67, 68 is where they're really. I mean, you might have some early birds getting in there around 65, but most of them's going to come in about 67, 68 degrees.
So we'll say, 65 to 70 degrees, right around that mark. When that first new moon cycle hits, that's when the first wave will actually move up to spawn. And they'll spawn out, and then they'll move out, and then the next new moon, the next wave, and they'll keep doing that until eventually all of them spawned out of that lake. So just because you have some of them that it seems like the majority of them spawned out, still, you know, if you're not having any luck, move up shallow to see if you can locate any more of the beds. And they'll reuse beds too. If there's already a bed up there, they'll actually reuse another bed. So they, you know, you might not see them bedding, but they might be laying on a bed. So if you've located a group of beds or something during the spawn season, and you're still trying to see if any of them's late spawners, move in there and see if you can go back to that same group of beds and see if there's one laying on it, because chances are there will be. But yeah, I think you're right as far as the shallow lake, like the lake here in the neighborhood, it's pretty shallow up until you get past, like, out into the middle of it. That's when it gets to the deepest. It's pretty deep out there, but it warms up super quick.
It does.
And so I think we're spawned out on this lake as well. Sheldon Reservoir, I think it spawned pretty quick, especially the clear water. Like I said, you know, it don't take much for that sun to get down and heat up the bottom. So I think that is. But you did catch that 4-pounder, and you caught it up in shallows though.
It was fairly shallow. It was probably about 5 feet off the shoreline, just where the heavy grass starts to drop off. Lake Sheldon, for the most part, is a series of islands that run parallel with each other, so it makes kind of like canals, and you can go up one canal and fish both sides and come back down the other side and fish two sides of more islands. And so where I caught the 4-pounder was right where one of the islands end, and that is a good ambush spot. There was a lot of current in that area with like all the rain.
Yeah, it creates like a channel there.
It was a very much so. It was created a channel. There was heavy current coming around, and I actually had put down the top water and was throwing a chatterbait with a rage tail Okeechobee crawl on the back for a trailer, and I had cut the front end of it off so I could lower my profile a bit, make it a smaller profile, and I was casting just off the grass line, which was about 5 feet out from the shoreline, but it was right at the tip of the island where the water current came around that tip, and it made a good ambush point. You could actually see the difference between the fast water and the calm water, and that's about where I cast, and I let it go all the way to the bottom, and I pulled up once and let it set back down, and then when I pulled up the second time, he nailed it, or she nailed it, and the fight was on from that point. So she was setting up near the grass line, but it was still out from the bank a bit, and I used a darker color because when we got out there, we'd only been out there maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And when we got out there, it was still dark. We got out at about 6:30 in the morning. It was just barely getting light, so I chose to go with a darker color.
Right.
Because of the clear water, go with a darker color because it's still kind of dark. The sun hadn't come up very good and lit the water yet, so going with that, she just immediately hit it. 2 pools up, and she had it and was running with it.
I'm actually glad you made that point about the dark color. We fished a local tournament here on the lake, and I think I started to do a video on that, but it didn't work out, so I don't think I ever posted it. But I was very successful. I came in second place on that tournament, and I was successful early because of a jig, a darker color jig, early morning before sunlight. And I was using a net bait pack-a-chunk that has a real hard vibration with the crawl trailer. And that's with that sunlight, the chatterbait, which I've done a video on the chatterbaits as well. They're perfect for year-round baits. You can burn them, you can roll them, slow roll them. They're really good year-round baits. But that dark color, like you said, fish, the bass don't just hunt just because of eyesight. They use multitudes of things. They use their eyesight and they use their lateral line. And when it's dark outside, they can't really sight fish or sight hunt that much. So that dark color will actually create a shadow in the water, the dark profile. They're not going to be able to tell what it is, but they're going to be able to see something's there moving. And so that allows them to get a sight vision on it and actually see what they're looking at. But the chatterbait itself, like I said in the video, that blade on the front of it chatters, makes a lot of noise, it pushes the water around a lot, and that will actually allow their lateral line to key in on it. So that's actually a really good choice for early morning if you're going to be fishing under the water instead of top water, or they can't really see that well. That chatterbait's going to allow them to hone in on it with their lateral line, and it obviously proved successful on that one because it was a nice fish.
Well, another reason I like this under those conditions, especially in the morning when it's dark, you can't see down in the water to see the weed line very well. And when I say weed line, Sheldon has a lot of grass,
There's
weeds,
no line.
and hydrilla.
Yeah.
It's very thick and hard to rip through, but a chatterbait or a bladed swim jig, whatever you want to call them, they come through that very well. And you don't have to necessarily see that grass line to be able to rip through it. So if you do throw into the grass, you can still be fairly confident you're going to be able to come through it without a lot of hang up.
Yep. And I actually made a reference to that in my last video too. But remember, there's the rage blade and there's the regular chatterbait. The rage blade has the weight on the front of it. That's going to be your structure blade. That don't come through the grass as much. That heavy weight on the front of the blade will actually dig down into the grass. but it's awesome for coming through lead downs and structure. Where the chatterbait that has that big hard hook on the front, on the back side of it, and there's not that weight to deflect it away, it'll hang up on structure, but it rips through grass better than most baits will. So that is a good thing. But I threw a chatterbait for a little bit, and I didn't have any luck with it. I think the chatterbait I was throwing, or I had, was a little heavier. Again, Sheldon's covered in grass, and like I did, what I would do is after I found out I was digging the bottom too much with it, I'd cast it out 1 or 2 times, count down to when I felt it hit the bottom, and that tells me how far to let it drop before I start retrieving it. So once I found this, I think it was like 4 seconds or something like that, or just 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. I think it was like 4 seconds. Once I found that was the bottom, I would only let it drop about 2.5 counts, and then I start retrieving. I try to keep it up in the middle or on the top of that grass line to keep it from digging in too much.
Yeah, and this is a 1/4 ounce, 3/8 ounce. It's a fairly light chatterbait.
Yeah.
It's not a heavy.
I think that might be a 1/4 ounce, because I think the one I was throwing was a 3/8,
Yeah,
and it was digging the bottom.
That looks like a 1/4 ounce.
So, what was your next success one on that one?
The next thing I was throwing, I throw this one a lot. This is a pocket rocket by Reaction Baits. I love these worms, plastic worms. It's got, they're heavy enough that you can throw it without a weight, and they still fall very well through the water because they don't have the weight on one end, so they fall very well. They have good movement to them. They actually have ridges that are going against the flow of the current, so it actually displaces a little bit of water. They're thin in the middle and heavier on the ends, which allows it to work its way down and flex. To me, this is a great, just absolutely great finesse type worm. I like to cast them. I can get a long, good cast using my Johnny Morris Signature Series rod and reel, and that allows me to really get it out there. Well, it's a Shimano rod, but it's a Johnny Morris reel, and it's a great for casting, and that allows me to get it out there a long distance away from the boat, so I'm not stirring up the fish or scaring them away.
Let's see if I can show you. This one's a green pumpkin, and if you look in the middle there where he's talking about it has a thin part, I think this will make a really good wacky rig style worm. If you put your bands, if you ever used a wacky rig tool, it's almost already measured off for you. And it has a weighted side on both sides. It's a little thicker, so it's a little heavier, and it'll give you a little more action.
And there's several colors of these that I fish. I really do well with the green pumpkin normally, and there's one called a I think it's Payback, which is the like a dark blue, and then there's a Paycheck, which is a dark blue and a lighter blue mixed. And I do very good in darker conditions, darker water, muddy water with those. In clear water, I'll fish the green pumpkin and the other color, and I can't remember what it is. It's like an Okeechobee type color. But I do very good in clear water with this. But on this day, this is usually my go-to bait, that plastic worm right there. I fish that more than any bait I have. And it didn't work that day. We just weren't getting any hits on these. So I changed off of that, and I actually fished the rest of the day pitching another bait that's put out by Grande Bass, and this is called a 4-inch mutant, and I did Texas rig it with a slip shot bullet type, maybe 1/4 ounce.
That's not a quarter.
That ain't a 1/4 ounce. That's like a 3/16. Yeah. It's very, very light.
Lead weight.
And I didn't want to get down deep into it. I usually use this one on a 2.0 or a 3.0 hook. I think this one is a 2.0 Texas rigged. And what I would do is just find any pocket in the grass and flip up into that and just barely give it a little bit of action off the bottom. And usually about the 3rd or 4th time you give it a little action, it'll draw the fish in there. And that's what I fished the rest of the day. I caught every other fish, I think, I caught one off the top water, the 4-pounder off the chatterbait, and I caught 4 from anywhere from a pound. I think the smallest I had was 3/4 pound, 0.7 something, and the rest of them were a pound to 2 pounds, and they were all coming off of this Mutant by Grande Bass, and I really liked it. It was the first time I had used it. I've cast it around, but not really used it. That was the first trip that I really used it, and had some decent success with it.
This is almost like it's this unique thing. I mean, really, it's a creature bait. It kind of has like that dual tail grub side on the back. It has these 2 real big paddles on the front, and then best way to describe the body of it is more like an actual brush hog if it wasn't for these 2 big large paddles on the top of it. This one's in I think this is a spray grass pattern. It's like a watermelon with a multicolored flake in it. But it's a very, very unique bait. I kind of like the looks of them myself. Those arms and appendages are going to get a lot of action going through the water, and those paddles will displace water a lot as well. That's a nice little finesse flipping bait for you.
Draws a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And like Nolan said, we used so many of those, used them up, casting out with the small fish.
Yeah.
And getting small hits. I actually used a whole bag of those and only got 4 fish off of them.
I mean, literally, like every cast I would cast, you would get a hit, but it was just they were too small to take it, and they would just eat the pinchers or the claws off my crawlback baits, their legs off of them, something that'll make it where it wouldn't swim right, and I had to change out on them. I went through a ton of soft plastics trying to figure out what they would hit and swallow, but I just think there's a lot of pinfish and a lot of yearling bass in there that wouldn't be enough to really do anything.
Yeah. And
that's actually funny though, because you actually caught a rock bass punching
I
through
did.
the mat.
You know, I had actually forgot about that. That I didn't count that bass because it was a rock bass, and we had a 12-inch limit, and he was smaller than a 12-inch limit. So later in the day, when the sun come up, wind's blowing, sun's high, blue sky. Well, there was a bit of overcast because they was calling for a chance of rain all day.
It was starting to come in.
It was starting to come in. So they had started moving under these really, really thick mats, and I put on a 1-ounce jig head and pitched way up in the air so it would bust through the mat on the way down, and didn't shake it but just a couple of times and got a hit, and it was probably about a 9 or 10-inch small rock bass.
Yeah, and he was using it was a wobble head. I don't know if you ever seen the biffle bugs and the biffle heads. It's like a real big football style almost jig head, the wobble heads with the loose free moving hook.
Yeah,
that's what he was using to punch through there, and it done pretty good. It's not like lily pads or anything like that. It's really just, I don't even know what they are. They're like clovers, mini lily pads that bunch up together. And
they're annoying.
Yeah,
that's what
they hook to your line a lot, but they literally just float right on top of the water. That creates shade a lot of times. So we did go through a period where the sun had came out a while and it got real hot, and I actually made comment to that, and I switched over to a heavy jig and was trying to punch their mats, and I got a really nice strike right off the bat, but I couldn't land him out of that, and but that's when he switched to that, because I made the comment, with the sun being out as long as it was, they probably did crawl up under those mats, and it seemed like there was a couple that got up in the mats like that, but I didn't expect him to pull out a rock bass on a beaver style bait and a 1-ounce jig head. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, the bait was almost as big as the fish.
My success didn't come until later in the day. Like I said, I was using the topwater frog early, and a bunch of different topwater baits, and I was getting a few little. You could see them popping it, but nothing could take it under. But I did get a topwater bite, a little tiny fella. I caught that on camera. Y'all saw that, and I caught that on the River to Sea Whopper Plopper. And I think this color is called Bleeding Blue. It's the one I used in my video, but I'm going to show you again just because people like to do reviews on this stuff. I haven't had any trouble with it, but I just realized as I was pulling this out and setting it up where I can show you that my back treble hook is actually broke. One of them broke off. So you may want to look into replacing the treble hooks. Of course, the company's not going to put the greatest treble hooks on it just for cost reasons. They don't want to spend as much money as they have to make a bait just because they still have to make a profit on it. But I really like these River to Sea Whopper Ploppers. These are kind of like a prop bait or a buzz style bait. You know, they just send off a lot of water across the top of the water. They send off a lot of bubbles, and I've had a lot of success on mine. I know you ordered a couple of them. But
I've ordered a couple of them. Fished one of them really hard the last couple of days, but conditions weren't really good for top water, so I didn't get any hits off of it. And just wasn't the right time.
And when I had my success, again, like I said, the sun had started coming out, and we had been flipping and pitching up shallow after, you know, it got morning time, and we wasn't really having too much success. So, again, thinking of the shallow lake, thinking they're probably spawned out, I made a comment that it's not a very deep lake, but they have just past the islands, it's almost like a forest area. They have a bunch of trees in the water just up about halfway up the tree, and that will be the next key structure, I think, offshore. That the bass, once they spawn, they would pull off to and stage up there, and that's where we started getting. I went through one area, and I think I made like 5 casts and got like 4 bites on it, and caught one of those little ones, and it was all on top water, and it was doing just that. You know, I was throwing the swapper plopper in between the trees, in between pads, little small pads of lily pads, stuff like that, and just cranking them through over top of that grass line. And I guess they were hiding up under that the lily pads and keeping cool and hot at the heat of the day. I mean, it was like midday when that happened.
Yeah, and it was a good breeze going, so we weren't using the trolling motor. We would motor up past the trees and past the grass lines, and then let the wind and current drift us down through that area. And one of the things about it is the grass pattern. There were edges on that grass pattern because the grass will not get up into tree line. There's not enough sunlight getting down into the water to grow the hydrilla in the grass. So when you come through the tree line, there were natural like walls where the grass just stopped. And if you got in between the trees and those grass lines and brought a top water through there, they would come out of the trees, come out of the grass lines, and from both angles, and we're getting a lot of top water hits off of that.
And that was midday, but the weather conditions were right for that. It had gotten hot, like I said, but by the time we started actually going out there, even though it was still real hot, the clouds had started rolling, and at that point, I think, kind of covered things up. Yeah. So we had a nice steady breeze, but the cloud cover kept it where it wasn't where they could see the baits. You know, I don't think you have as much top water when the sun's super high in the sky and they can see what's going through.
We were actually surprised and even talked about the fact that we didn't expect to get top water hits because it was so much ripple and current rippling up the water from the wind, and usually you get your better top waters on the calmer water. It was midday, sun was coming down, so they had a good look at the profile with the wind and all that. You know, I was, and really, even though it was only 6-7 foot of water in that lake, that's offshore. We weren't near, we were in the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
And so we were fishing top water offshore in not the best favorable conditions for top water. So I was really surprised we were getting top water hits.
But it could be so much as the fact of, most people don't probably fish that out there too. You know, this is a small lake and it probably gets hit hard, and it was just something different that he's seen sometimes that, you know, if you're not having luck or success with something that you're not used to having success with, that is a common thing, try throwing something different at them and see if they won't hit it. Because that did kind of catch me by surprise. Not to mention it got me out of my comfort zone, which that we talked about. You know, we really enjoyed that. Me and him have a similar but different way of fishing. I prefer jigs and stuff, but he prefers soft plastics, and I'm more of a Texas rig with a weight, and he'll rig his weightless. He has a little more finesse to his style, I think, where I'm more of a power fisherman. But the general idea and concept is the same. We like to flip and pitch a lot, do a lot of brush fishing, a lot of bank fishing, really pound the banks when we're fishing. But there's a big difference, and there's a small similarity there too. Which is actually where I got my 4-pounder at, is up in one of the trees. And as we come up, I think I edited out a video. As we come up, I was actually using a whopper plopper in between the trees, and I seen this huge tree had fallen over in the water and was laid down. And I actually put the whopper plopper on and picked up my open face, and I have one of these soft plastics jerk baits tied on. And this one's in it's kind of got a green pumpkin on top or a watermelon seed on the bottom. and a red flake in it, or a watermelon red flake top. I mean, it's a kind of a darker. It's not as see-through. It's not as transparent on top. And basically, I took it and I was flipping with that open face, and because I'm rigging this weightless, and it has a very, very, very slow fall to this, and I think that's kind of what triggered it, is that clear water, and they were able to see it. And I flipped to the back of the tree, and let it sink down, and I kind of jigged it a little bit, and didn't get nothing, and I didn't even pull it out of the water. I literally just picked my rod up, brought it to the front fork that was laid down, and opened my bell up so it could fall down again, and I set my bell back. I think I moved it twice, and he hit it, and like it was kind of cool because of the clear water again. I got to see, you know, this just big white belly come up and suck the bait up, so I actually got to see him eat it, so that was pretty cool. And he was a 4 1/4, so that was really fun. It was a fun fight. It was a little 6'6" medium action ride, open face ride, and I think I have this 8-pound Monotex line. That's a new line. I never heard of it. It's by a brand called Gliss. It's basically supposed to have the handle of monofilament, but the strength of braid, and I think they live up to that. That's one of the few and far between people that I can say have put something on a package and they live up to that. It casts a mile. It's phenomenal for casting.
String with lock.
And yeah, I mean, you cast it and your line would just sit there and just float down whether the wind is blowing or not. It's super light. You cast super light tackle on it, but it has, I think I've only broken it off twice, and I'm fishing up around some nasty stuff. But it's super strong. Even with the 8-pound, it's super strong, I think. It definitely has the strength of braid, but the castability of monofilament, I would say. So if you haven't heard of Gliss line, look them up and see if you can't get you some, because I recommend it. It's not too expensive. I think it's $15 for 150 yards,
yeah.
Which is probably about common for braid, but they had a good deal going when we got their spray rods. So the only other thing that I was using is I was using a Texas rig again, like he was flipping and pitching, and I got actually a heavy duty. I think this is a V&M. I think it's the name brand. 4-aught flipping a hook on there. I don't know if you see that, has a nice bait keeper on there. And I used every soft plastic I have in the book, and they just, like I said, and this is the last one I had on there. It's a Chigger Cross and a spray grass. It's like a watermelon multi-flake color bait, and the little appendages here, the legs, they would eat those off. The paddles, they were eating those off. The speed crawls, I tried those. They would rip those off, and I mean, even for the little ones, what seemed like little pinfish, they were hitting it hard, and they just would not get the whole thing. And I mean, you can see that's not a very big flipping hook, and they just could not. I mean, it takes up most of the body of the soft plastic too. I don't know if you can see that. Like it takes up most of the body of that soft plastic, but they would not get it in their mouth for some reason.
Or they'd hit it and take it in and run with it, and you think, okay, I got this one, and go to set the hook, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You just pull it right out of their mouth because they're just getting the paddles off of it.
They're getting the plastic and not the actual hook. So in total, we caught, like, you had 7.
I had 6 keepers, and the rock bass was 7.
So he had 7, and I had just 3, I guess, right?
Yeah, 2 keepers and 1 that didn't measure.
Yep, I had one that was 7.8, I think. 0.78, yeah, 0.78 pounds, and then the other one was 4 1/4, and then that little baby I caught on top water, which I didn't even look. I didn't even try to measure him. He was tiny, and threw him back. But like I said, that kind of surprised me. That took me by surprise too, because I mentioned in the intro to the last video that I caught like 22 last time we were out there.
Yeah.
And you caught 17, something like that, last time we were out there. So I mean, it was just there were a lot of little dinks. The biggest one we caught was the 3-pounder that I caught, but it was as soon as the bait hit the water, you know, you were setting the hook and just throwing them in the boat, but it just was not like that again. But different day, different weather conditions, different circumstances, but I still had fun. I'm hoping that we'll do it again sometime. Well, I know we will, but definitely start doing a little bit more 1v1 tournaments. Just, you know, I mentioned in my kayak video that everybody has that one person that they fish with a lot, that they have competition with a little bit, but it's not just about the competition, it's about memories. And if one of the things I love about the sport is it's not just fishing a lot of times, you know. I think as far as a male bonding aspect of it, fishing, hunting, stuff like that, that's like one of the key things in life that you can do to really bond with a father and son, that kind of thing. Is something that he introduced me to fishing. He taught me, you know, how to fish from a very young age, and I just got into it and studied it, and now I know more than him. So
But it's our whole family too. My wife, your mom, is a avid fisher.
Yes.
Woman person. My other son, Brad, is a huge fisherman, but he's all about the salt water. Whereas Nolan is all about the fresh water, and my wife likes fresh water, but she's more about salt water.
And don't get me wrong, I like my saltwater fishing too. I like doing shark fishing and stuff. And I plan on doing that and taking some camera gear and recording some saltwater fishing when next time we go.
And me, any place I can wet a hook, I'm happy.
And I've actually enjoyed my wife, I guess, because fishing has taken up so much of my life now. She actually has tried to go out with me a couple of times on a boat and done some fishing with me, which I really enjoy. It's just, two people out on a boat, it gives you time just to spend time with each other, and just communicate if you want to communicate. If you want to just sit there and enjoy company, you can do that. It's more than, it really is more than just fishing a lot of times when it's just between two people. It's making memories, especially with your kids. My son, he's about to be 2 in June, and I take him fishing all the time. I haven't here lately. He's kind of at that age where you don't want to be still, but I enjoy being out there. Right now, even though he don't grasp the concept completely, I know he will eventually, and I want to get him in an early age, just like I was introduced at an early age, because I think that it's memories you can't get back, really. It creates a lifelong memory.
That, and if you want to keep a young man on the straight and narrow, good path, good raising, spend time with them one-on-one, get them introduced to fishing early, and spend a lot of time with them, and you'll end up raising a good man.
I agree, 100%. So I think that's going to about wrap it up for tonight. Just a quick little video. If you like this, we'll start probably doing some more of it. If we start doing some more fishing tournaments against each other, that kind of stuff, we'll might make this a little session, call it the talk or something like that. But just thought y'all might want to see where our success came from, where our fails came from, our faults came from, and what kind of conditions it was like out there.
My success, your fail.
Yeah, this time, one time out of 1,000. But even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. If you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Follow me on my social media websites. I'll leave the links in the description below. Until next time, tight lines to you, and I'll see you in the future.